We start off part 2 with this documentary, having just looked at the record of minutes in the books here from 1907, September 17th, 1907. Here's later on when, after the shed, they upgraded to a bigger building. Here's a bunch of guys who had similar hats to William H. Bonney, also known as Billy the Kid, also known as Henry McCarthy. A great hero, in my opinion, who was given a bad reputation by our government and by history. They have hats similar to what he wore. They also got some of these old, nice, real old-time hats. There's a book containing the first shares of Harley Davidson Motor Company stocks, 1907. See, when you take a tour here at the Harley Davidson Museum, they read everything off a script, stuff that they want you to know. Because there's a lot of stuff that they don't want you to know, such as about the flat track board racing and how people were killed during the races, and they don't want you to know that stuff. And Harley Davidson Motor Company and the Davidson family was actually very upset when they made the documentary Harley and the Davidsons, because they put a lot of stuff in there that was true that they did not want anybody to know about. When you look over here, here's Walter Davidson. There's some regular bicycles that Harley Davidson used to make. Here's part of a sprocket. Later on, Harley Davidson developed what was known as the double loop frame, because regular frames just weren't strong enough to hold engines. The nice thing about this documentary is we're going to tell you the real history of everything that happened with the company, whether it's good or bad. That's part of what this walkthrough is. Here's some of the stuff they won with racing. Originally, when you get into the club's competition room, it'll tell you right out that Harley Davidson didn't want to get into racing and that their bikes weren't designed for it. But in order to stay competitive, they had to. You know, sad thing is talking about Harley Davidson and the stuff that they don't want you to know. When our co-founder worked at the plant up until 2019 AD, when actually he was laid off in 2019 AD. It was 2020 AD when his position, along with 700 others, were eliminated due to downsizing because of the coronavirus 19 outbreak. Nobody was buying motorcycles, so the company eliminated 700 positions, including his. While he worked there building engines as well as quality control and inspection, and he came across a lot of engines, he said, that had defects and scratches in the rocker tops, and his supervisors and his managers used to tell him, just pass it. Nobody's going to see it. It's going to be hidden under the gas tank. Well, our co-founder never passed them because he felt it was wrong, and he used to reject them and send them back to repair. And he actually got into a bit of an argument with his supervisor at one time, telling him, no, he's not going to pass the engine if there's a defect on it. And the supervisor kept telling him to pass it, and he said no. And he told the supervisor, you want to pass it, you scan your ID and you pass it, because if something goes wrong with it, that way it can come back on you and not him. And our co-founder was very smart for doing that. He took pride in his work. Now looking at this is a 1936 EL Knucklehead. Prototypes came out in 1935 for this. Our co-founder, great uncle Alexander, this is the kind of motorcycle they would have had around the time when he worked for the company. These are what's called fishtail pipes. Here's some of the comics and stuff they used to do and promotional stuff. Everything used to be painted on these by hand. You had to have a steady hand. Now everything's done with machines and laser equipment and, you know, the lazy way like the government wants to do with, they want to get rid of jobs and let robots do it. But you got to think, if you do robots, how are you going to make money to pay your bills? Here's your Survey cars here. They actually have a lot of robots at the Harley Davidson plant that build these things and design certain parts for the parts that they do make in America. The majority of it's outsourced, though. Cheap steel from China. You look at these are pretty cool. So you're getting a history lesson about the company, the museum, as well as other things. Now, these Survey cars, later on, they design these and they call them trikes. Today, they make what's called freewheelers, which is a knockoff of the trike. Very cool. Now, this here is a 1939 Model G Survey car, side valve V-twin, and it is unrestored, as you can see. Now, this one is a 1932 Model G Survey car. It's older, and this one is restored. It's a very nice blue color. I love the color of it. This is around the time Harley Davidson started coming out with different colors and giving customers options. You know, it's really sad. I think Harley Davidson should go back to making the Survey cars. I think they would really sell. You can still find them, used ones, but a lot of times the big motorcycle clubs, a lot of them, the real well-known ones, tend to buy them up. Five colors came out in 1933 for motorcycles. You can tell a lot of them too by their logos on there. From the 1903 to 1920s, they had gas tanks with logos like that. Then later on, the 1930s, they moved to gas stations with, it looks like a bird on the gas station, gas tank. And then in 1936, you had this is called the Speedball logo. As you walk around here, a lot of this flooring, this is used from, I guess, over at the old plant. Talks about road work and motor vehicles, the horse and buggy. Still used by the Amish today, which is very cool, the horse and buggy. Motorcycles are very popular even with the government. This is a United States postal vehicle for the mail. It's got what's called a telescoping wheel, which means this wheel you could adjust and you could pull it outward in order to get around ruts in rural areas. This is a 1916 Model J with a package truck, F-head V-twin. And they sold back then for about $425. Nowadays, you'd buy something like this, you're paying $20, $30, $40, even up to $60,000 or more. Back then, the sad thing is, it's made with real steel here in America. Stuff from Pittsburgh steel, and nowadays everything's outsourced. It's really sad. So I said, we're not trying to make Harley Davidson sound like a bad company, but we want everybody to know the truth about it. Harley Davidson even made toys at one time. You look at here we start getting to the government section. Some of the old posters and stuff in the display cases. Even the motorcade for President John Fitzgerald Kennedy Sr.'s funeral. Actually, I'm sorry, I was wrong. That's Martin Luther King's funeral. Oh no, I was wrong again. This is Franklin Roosevelt's funeral. I gotta look at this. Then you got the Apollo astronauts here, Apollo 11. You have President Kennedy here. That's what I was reading. I looked at the sign wrong. You have right here Martin Luther King, civil rights. Back when the U.S. was friends with Russia, World War II. Talks about when the Nazis invaded Poland, September 1st, 1939. It's Enthusiast magazine. This will be our last section that we're going to look at right now. This is a very cool poster. Uncle Sam's Choice for Harley Davidson. I love how it's drawn. The Quartermaster School. Part 3 will pick up over here when we come back. Looking at the V-twin engine 45 model. It's all very cool. And this concludes part 2. Stick around for part 3.